So I wanted to make everyone aware of that. And then students, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and panelists, if you want to respond in the Q&A, you can, or we will have some time towards the end for questions, and I can, read the questions and you all can take turns answering those. And then also students, feel free, if you want to put something in the chat, do that as well. And what we're going to do is we've got questions for our panelists, and I'm going to actually have the panelists introduce themselves to you. And so I've got a question that I'm going to start the whole team off with. And after each person answers the question, then I'll have a question that anyone, it can just kind of be popcorn and anyone can answer the question. Everybody can answer it if they want, or if just two people have a response, that's fine. And then, like I said, students, please feel free to add information into the chat or the Q&A, and we are happy to help with that. Would you like closed caption on? I think that's fine. Sure. Especially if that'll be helpful. Okay, all right. So I'm Elizabeth MacDonald, and I am the career consultant for the College of Arts and Sciences in the Career Connection Center. So welcome to our Connect to Careers, focusing on creative careers. We do these all year long, and I have to tell you, I'm very excited about this one because for liberal arts majors, so much of what we do is using all different kinds of skills, creative skills, critical thinking skills, all of these things that I know all of you are using probably minute by minute in what you're doing in your career pathways. And so we're excited for students to hear what you have to share and to also ask some questions. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to just see Monique, you're the far left, and I'm going to start with you. But then after you, whoever wants to go next, and I'd like all of our panelists to answer the first question, which is, could you tell us a little bit about who you are, specifically your current role in your own words, and then in a brief summary of maybe some of your past experiences?
Hi, everyone. Welcome. And the train is just now passing as it's time my turn to speak. So I apologize for that. My name is Monique Bird. I am actually the social media manager at Texas Women's University. I run 13 of our highest institutional level accounts, and that's kind of my role in a nutshell. It's kind of self-explanatory, but I know we'll get more into that later. My past, I've been in marketing and higher education for about 15 years. Truly love it. Have done everything from television news to public relations. And so this is just kind of the latest stop on my journey. And without going into too much detail, that's me in a nutshell.
Hi, everyone. My name is Justin Nelson. I am in Brooklyn, New York. I started off a year ago. Well, I moved to New York to pursue a performance career on Broadway. I got my master's at the University of Memphis, master's of arts and liberal studies for performance. And then I pivoted to branding and marketing here in New York. So now I'm the project manager for Fitman Cook, and I also serve as the Pinterest manager for him as well. And I do social media marketing for my church here in Brooklyn.
Hey everybody, my name is Matt Bolinger, and I am a storyboard artist for Warner Brothers. So like for the animation department, and I've worked on like a couple different shows, but basically I just, they give me the scripts and we have to draw them up. It's pretty much as simple as that.
Royce, do you want to go next?
Oh, sorry, I'm on my phone, so I didn't know where I fit in the screen. Excuse me. But hi, I'm Royce Sarpy. I am currently in Prince George's County. I'm an educator here. But I joined the panel today because I'm also a published children's book author, and I also illustrate as well. So I got my start in working with children's books after being a teacher for 6 years. I decided to go and write books because I noticed there was a lack of literature that had Black and brown children in it early readers, which is my niche for teaching elementary. I've taught kindergarten all the way to 6th grade, and I realized in each grade there weren't many children of color. So that's what I do now. I author children's books.
Okay, awesome, great. Well, thank you so much for introducing who you are and a little bit about yourself. So the next question that we have is, what experience, okay, whether it was academic, professional, maybe extracurricular, do you think helped you get your foot in the door or helped you in getting started in your respective fields? And I think this is probably a really good question for our students to hear, because a lot of students are trying to find that way in and find that chance for opportunities. If y'all could share that, that would be great. And I'd love to hear from all 4 of you, but y'all can go in any order that you want to go, whoever just wants to go first.
I can go first. For me, it's really hard to pin down a single thing because, and maybe I'll get a chance to talk about this later, all of the different experiences that I've had throughout my life have all just started to blend the older I get. And I find that I start to use pretty much all of the skills that I've had. Probably the biggest thing that I would say was anything that gave me hands-on experience, where I was actually doing something as opposed to just reading it in a textbook. And so I always tell students, I've been in higher education, like I said, for a long time. And so I have students, if you're an entrepreneur major and you're thinking about starting a business at some point, start that business in college. And even if it fails and even if it doesn't go the way that you want, you'll be able to take the textbook knowledge that you're learning and apply it. And that is not something that I always did. Sometimes I waited until like after the class was over, and then you're having to remember, oh, what was that thing I learned? And what was that really cool thing that the teacher said? And you're just not applying it as much. And so I would say anything that gives you hands-on experience, and then in line with that, anything that allows you to use that experience while you're learning it. So those probably 2 things was what I'd say.
And also to piggyback off that, with me have a performance background, I was able to, well, education and performance background, I was able to use a lot of those, the curriculum building aspect to cultivate what I do now. I was a graduate assistant in college, so I use what I learned from working the front desk to operate a business. Like, I knew organization was key. So it was a lot of key things that I picked up from other fields. I now consider myself a multi-hyphenate because aside from project management, I still perform. I'm a nutritionist. I do graphic design. So I do a lot, but everything I do works well within each other. So.
I'll just kind of add on to that, going off what both of you just said. For me, it was like working in the entertainment industry, like especially being from Texas. I didn't break in until well after college, and just like getting the opportunity to take classes with specifically like animation, that were specifically animation focused, with professionals in the industry, to be like, no, you're doing this wrong. Like, think about doing this. This is what is the absolute minimum requirement to do this professionally, kind of stuff that maybe you can find online. But hearing it from a real person in real life really made it click for me.
Royce, did you feel that you had maybe a certain, experience or something that helped you get your foot in the door?
Honestly, having a diverse teaching background, I taught in New York, I taught in Brooklyn, in Harlem, I taught in Austin, I taught in Dallas, I taught in DC. So seeing in all the schools the same lack is what kind of helped me put my foot in the door, in a sense. And studying the books that I was teaching from an author's lens and not just from an educator's lens allowed me to implement a lot of those reading strategies into my children's book. So it's an instructional book and not just a picture book, if you will. It's a book that can be used and has been used in classrooms since I've published across the country, which is great to see. Many teachers have sent me back lesson plans from the book that I created. And that's only was possible with my education background.
Okay, excellent. So what would you say then are, or how would you, let me ask this question first. How did this idea of who you know play a role in your career path, whether it was a direct connection or if you actively sought out people to network with? And I think I would love to hear your feedback on this, because I think that this is a challenge for some students. It's a challenge for a lot of people, but I think for some students, especially if they're reaching out to people that they don't know, did you do much of that? Did you try to create opportunities for yourself? Did you contact people? Can you share, we'd love to hear if you could share maybe what your experience was with that, and maybe if you're still doing that, and if you still find it a way that is helping you grow or maybe find new opportunities. We would love to hear some feedback.
I'll start. I will gladly say I am the king of sliding in DMs when it comes to a business opportunity. But I have to make sure that I have all of my ducks in a row before I slide anywhere. So like I make sure my LinkedIn profile is up to date, my Clubhouse information is up to date, Twitter, website, everything is nice and cute before I slide into any DM, so that I can make sure my presentation is good. And that's honestly how I ended up working for Fit Man Cook. We joked around on social media. He came to New York for a book signing event. I was there. He was just like, "Oh, you're Justin from," like, that's me. And 2 years later, I'm working for him. So it's about, being bold in your approach and making sure you present yourself the best way. Like, I'm the person you want, or I'm the person for this job. So that's my 2 cents or 3 cents.
Yeah, I'll hop in there too. And I think especially in regards to the who you know, like there is an aspect of that that's still true, but because of the internet, I think it's becoming less and less true, because every job opportunity I've had was similar things, either reaching out on the internet or just sending a cold email and like, hey, here's my website. Can we work together? So yeah, and so far it's kept working. So.
I can go. I'm probably the outlier here, but for me, when I first really started focusing on networking in college, that was a really scary word to me. I was like, networking. I was like the thought of doing that. And I come across as a very outgoing and energetic person, but I'm actually very naturally shy. And so the thought of networking has always been very challenging for me. But I would say as I've gotten older, a couple of things have made that easier. One, I stopped calling it networking and just started calling it relationship building, because that's really what it's about. It's about making connections with people and building those relationships. And it definitely has helped me, even though I would not call myself the best at networking. Of my full-time career, I've worked 4 jobs, and 3 of the 4 have been through I knew somebody. Either I knew somebody or they knew me previously and they knew my work ethic. And then when an opportunity came around, they said, hey, you know what? I've seen you do this before. I know how hard you work. Let's work again. And even beyond just work opportunity, I do a lot of freelancing on the side. I do some website design, which is something I really randomly fell into. An opportunity presented itself for a film festival that I was kind of volunteering with, kind of working with, and they needed a website. And I couldn't find anybody that I liked. And I was like, well, I think I can build a website. So I figured out how to build a website. And then someone saw their website and said, who did your website? And they were like, oh, it's this person. And so then it's just kind of become this thing. And then that guy, he knew someone who needed a website. And so it's just so that relationship building in conjunction with just knowing that I work hard, not to the point where I'm just totally exhausted, because I think people do have to kind of find that balance between work and life. But definitely those two things have worked together. So figure out who is in your circle, who do you know, and build relationships with those people. And by relationships, I don't mean the fake kind where you're just checking on them so that you can call them later with a job opportunity, but like actually really caring, you know. If they tell you that one of their relatives is sick, checking on them, hey, how's your brother? How's your mom? You know, if they are having a baby or getting married, like asking about the things happening in their lives. For you guys as students, that's a little bit harder because you can't pop into offices as easily with COVID, but that doesn't mean you can't send an email. And so sometimes I just send people an email, even if it's been a few years since I've talked to them, and I'll just say, hey, just thinking about you, or just sending a smile your way. And even if it just starts like a 2 or 3 exchange text or email, I know that if I need to reach out to them in the future, it's not going to be like, oh, she's the person who only reaches out when she needs something. They're going to know that I genuinely care about them. And so the more you can do that and just getting to know people, and it is scary. Put yourself out there. You may get some no's, but no is not the end of the world. Don't take it personally. People say no for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes it's just bad timing. They have something going on in their life, and they're just not a good fit for this point, or just don't take a no personally, but don't be afraid. If you're like Justin or Matt and you're more inclined to slide into somebody's DMs, don't be afraid to take that chance.
I would add that being in professional organizations outside of college, once you graduate, or finding organizations within college that you will be a member of once you finish. So for instance, I was in the Collegiate 100 while I was in college, 100 Black men. And post-college, I joined the 100 Black men in Texas and moved on in New York and found them when I got to DC as well, which connected me to mayors, to politicians, to so many people in the field of education, which then connected me to authors and publishers that were independent. So I believe in connecting the dots in your career. And if you don't know where you are as I didn't know I was going to be a teacher when I was an undergrad at all. I didn't know I was going to end up being an author for children's books either. But I made sure whatever I did led to where I am now. When I look back at it, I was an after-school counselor, and then I was a camp director, and those things kind of opened up the field for me to be in where I am now. And it also kept my network pretty wide to where I can reach out to anybody that is in those other fields that happen to go in tandem in a sense. And lastly, I believe in having multiple mentors, not just one mentor in one field. Like Dr. Greg Shirley is my mentor, and that's why I'm here today. But I also have a mentor that is an author. I have a mentor that's a publisher. I have a mentor as a superintendent, because I believe in getting experience from someone in each field. And I believe in going back to the old way where, Socrates had his teachers and whatnot. So yeah, keeping your net wide is my biggest advice.
Okay, I'm so happy we're recording this because all of your answers were so on the mark, and I'm so appreciative that you're sharing, whether it was hard or what it took to actually put yourself out there, Monique, because especially students that I talk to often, I think they're just afraid. They're just afraid to reach out, just even through LinkedIn. We're always encouraging, saying, maybe you could just do a LinkedIn coffee chat or something with someone and just have a conversation, just something to learn more, see how you can help someone out. And I love the idea of the professional organizations. Maybe there's a student org that's part of a professional organization. Those are such great ways. And even if it takes a little bit of time to, especially if you're very introverted, and I know a lot of artists can be, but once you're in a group, maybe with people with similar, goals or desires or, artistic leanings, I think that can help. So that was wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we would love to know, what are a couple of key skills, okay, whether they're hard skills or soft skills, or maybe a blend, that you found to be very helpful to you and actually probably very necessary for you in your work? And how were you able to build upon those skills? Or how did you, I guess, if you didn't have them, how did you gain those? What would you, I guess, share with our students in terms of skill sets and how they can best go about, I guess, developing those and really knowing what they should focus on?
Okay, I'll start. So one skill that I've had to really tap into coming out of performance into marketing and brand management and stuff is more so just do it. Don't look for perfection. Perfection will come as you work towards it. Get the idea out there and just go for it. It's not really a skill, more so it is a life hack that I've gathered, but it's still something very important. Also, I'm a bit OCD when it comes to like organization and things. You got to be comfortable with everything not being organized all the time. I sit here at my desk waiting for emails and waiting for responses. So it's a time management. That's it. That's the skill. Time management. Learn time management. Be okay with your schedule, like fluctuating things. People cancel. People overbook. It's fine. But time management. Just remember you're in control of that time. So use your time wisely. That's my advice. Yes.
I would say figuring out what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses. Of your weaknesses, what do you actually want to work on? Play to your strengths, and don't leave a horrible weakness on the floor. But sometimes you just have to say, you know what, that's just not my area. And I'm going to try to work around it. And so I used to adjunct and I used to teach developmental writing. And so I would tell a student, if you're not sure about the grammar on a sentence, for goodness sake, rewrite the sentence in a way that the grammar is going to work. You don't have to spend 30 minutes looking up the proper grammar for that sentence. Don't limit yourself in that way. To go along with what Justin was saying, I used to work really hard. I grew up working hard. That's what I know. It's what I do naturally really well. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that actually slows you down. And so sometimes you have to learn just to work smarter. And so sometimes it truly is about quantity, because the quantity will give you the practice you need to begin developing quality work. That doesn't mean that everything you put out there is just like poo-poo. Try to still put some decent things out and do put some time to it. But if you're like Justin, or apparently myself, and you feel like a perfectionist, you can spend way too much time. And I think sometimes creatives you spend way too much time on a project, and then, you didn't get anything else done because you were so focused on making that perfect. And sometimes there's beauty in the imperfections, especially now. I think people are more accepting of just people as they are, and not everything has to be polished and perfect. Again, that doesn't mean you want to put a bad product out there. So if you're the flip side of us, if you're the student who you don't mind putting whatever out there and some of your stuff does look kind of crappy, maybe you do need to say, you know what, that's not my challenge. My challenge is I just put whatever out there. And so maybe I do need to work a little bit harder and put a little more energy. So those two things combined. Learning to say no, that's a big thing for a lot of people, especially when I used to adjunct. I also used to teach journalism, and I was amazed at how stressed students were. And I was amazed, even with this like 15-year age gap, I wasn't much older than them, but just amazed at how much anxiety they had and how much they felt they needed to be perfect. And I would tell them all the time, I'd be like, look, don't tell any of your other professors I said this, but sometimes a C is okay. And you have to figure out what assignments are actually going to make the most impact on your grade or your job or your internship, or what are the key assignments, and put your energy there. If you got a minor assignment, don't spend 2 hours on that. You are going to limit your ability to do the major assignments well. And so sometimes you have to figure that out and say no. And no is a complete sentence. You don't have to give a whole lot of explanation. And that goes with your personal life as well. Just kind of figuring all of those things out, and who you are, what are your weaknesses, what are your strengths that you can play with. All of those things will really help. And then a couple of other skill sets, critical thinking and flexibility. I feel like people say it all the time, at least they did when I was in college. That was like the buzzword, but it really is true. Being able to think critically and on your feet, and most bosses do not want to micromanage people. They want to know that if they give you a job, you're going to be able to go and they're not going to have to hover over. And if a problem comes up, you're going to be able to adapt to that. You're not going to have to go to them 5 times and say, oh my gosh, this thing came up. What do I do? You're the expert. They hired you for a reason. They want you to be able to think critically through that problem. And that's a hard skill to teach if you didn't learn it when you were younger, but that doesn't mean you can't assess, you can't figure it out. And the biggest thing that I could say to figuring out or to improving your critical thinking skills is learning to look for the challenges and the obstacles before they come your way and just plan them. That doesn't mean you look at every single possible scenario of every single possible bad thing that happens, but just some big things that might become roadblocks, and learning to anticipate those and having solutions, I think will help you kind of work on that skill. So that's about it for me.
I really like what you said about knowing your strengths and weaknesses, because that was especially true for me. And some really good advice I got very early on is just like, eat your artistic vegetables, like whatever it is you're not good at, whatever you're putting off because it doesn't sound fun, like you need to do that stuff, and learning how to do those things will put you ahead of everyone else who doesn't want to put in the time to do that stuff. Another skill, I guess this is a skill for me that was really important, was perseverance, because like I think this is maybe true for a lot of creative types. You don't necessarily get the great job right out of college. Like it might take years, even maybe lots of years. So just like the ability to not give up and just continually believe in yourself and know what you want and work towards that, I think that is absolutely essential in this line of work. And then the other one for me is focus. Like at least, especially in animation, it is labor intensive. You just have to sit at your desk for 12 hours a day, and that can get so boring. So it's just like being able to set yourself up for success. Like, how am I going to keep my butt in my chair for 12 hours to get this done? And just like developing strategies to do that and really incentivize yourself to be in front of your desk. Because like if you haven't picked up the pencil, then it's never going to start and you're never going to get to where you want to go.
Also, one more thing, if I can add, or 2 more. Read this book, Atomic Habits. I don't know if you can see it, but this book during the pandemic has changed everything. Setting healthy habits, whether it's like a morning routine, nightly routine, those habits are like essential to building skills and everything you want, and never stop learning. Like things change so fast in every industry. Every week it seems like something different or something new is coming out. So never get complacent in something or feel like you know it all, because there's always someone else or something else to learn. So that's it.
I would say for me, discipline is the biggest skill that, and similar to what you were speaking about, for me, discipline happens in my personal life before I can apply to professional life. And as an author, no one is standing over your shoulder waiting for you to finish your book. No one is going to tell you what deadlines you need to meet. And with most creative fields, it's up to you to have that discipline to make and meet your goals. So for me, like you were saying, having a morning routine and a night routine keeps you structured enough in your personal life to where it'll carry over in your professional life. And excuse my student who's making flatulence noises. It happens. But so that discipline is something I also teach my students all the time. They can tell you that verbatim what it means to be disciplined in your life and how that can carry forth into your thank you, sir, into your professional life. But yes, I'm going to mute now because of the flatulence noises.
Hey, sometimes. So, okay, that was awesome. That was excellent. Such great information. And I did put in a link to the author's website for Atomic Habits so that you guys can check that out if you want. I think that's great advice and wonderful. So thank y'all so much for sharing all this advice is wonderful. And I love the emphasis on the strengths and weaknesses. That's usually a question that can catch up students in interviews. And so just even thinking about that as preparation for conversations that you're going to have would really be good. And I think over time, you'll probably learn even more of what you feel really are your strengths and areas that you have challenge in. And if you're not sure, you can make an appointment with your career consultant, and we're happy to talk to you about that. Okay, I want to ask one more question that I have, and then we've got questions from students that I'd like to address. But I'd like to know if you could all share with us, how has your work been impacted by COVID? And are there any changes that you think it will last beyond the current situation? Or what are you seeing? What are you thinking, future-wise? What challenges are out there? I heard several of you guys talk about fear and talk about persistency. And those are two common themes that I feel like we are constantly addressing with students. And so if you can maybe just speak to what you're seeing and what this past year has been for you and the challenges that have been there, and then maybe some future thoughts.
Sure. I'll go first. My answer is pretty quick. I actually kind of had my first real animation opportunity 3 weeks before COVID happened. So it's pretty much been my entire experience. I was in the office for 3 weeks before they sent everyone home to work remotely. But it's other than that huge aspect, it hasn't changed anything. We just, you're on your computer drawing all day long, upload it to Dropbox, and that's that. As far as what it carries over, I hope we get to work from home a little more often, but animation is such a solitary practice as it is that it didn't change too much, but I'll let everyone else take that one.
Matt, I have a quick question for you from that response. Do you think that having to be maybe at home or isolated, do you feel like it interrupted any of the flow with the team at all?
Yes. So for me, I've worked on 3 different shows since quarantine started. And the first one I worked on, I actually knew everyone, but everything since, I just don't know my teammates, which it's not inherently bad, but especially as far as like self-doubt and like, it's so easy to project all these questions like, oh, do they like this? Am I doing a good job? It does create, for me at least, as someone who's in my head a lot of like questions like, oh, I hope I'm doing good, because it's just like, if you were in the office, if you were communicating with these people on a daily basis, you would know and just have more access to them. So in that way, it can be really frustrating. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
I think I was just thinking, I know in creative fields, it's because we work on a team together, and often that really, I think, helps strengthen us a lot. And so I think, we've continued on ourselves, but not having that fluidity of being around people as much, I think, has probably impacted things a little bit. So I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Okay, whoever wants to go next, I'll step back.
Well, I was at Tina Turner the musical getting ready for work, and I got the call saying Broadway was shutting down. So that was that. Auditions at home, don't recommend it. I mean, I had to do what I had to do, but it was stressful turning your common area in your apartment into an audition studio. So it's been an adjustment. I've spent at least $3,000 on equipment, microphones, lighting, backdrops, dance shoes, stuff like that, just to survive as a performer. Right now, auditions have started to crank back up. Broadway should be reopening this fall. I've still done film auditions as well, but I was grateful for the break. There was a lot of stress and anxiety that came with 6 years of auditioning and rejection and acceptance and rejection and rejection. So while we're going through a political uprising on Broadway, it's been it's been a refreshing break for me, for performing for 15 years and then having a break. But as far as branding and marketing, there's been no break. I mean, everyone is switching or upgrading their digital platform, and new like Clubhouse just released, granted it's still in beta phase, it's still a great networking opportunity. So trying to bridge generations with technology, with like Zoom or Facebook Live, YouTube Live, it's been a challenge because a lot of people are, you know, like, I don't know how to use this. Let me teach you how to use this. I don't want to learn how to use this. How are we going to grow? So communication technology has been a blessing and a curse. It's been a struggle bus, but it's been a good pivot for a lot of people. And I don't know. I'm curious to see how auditions will be come June, July. I think we're still gonna have to do self tapes for a while for theater, but I don't know about film and television right now. But yeah, that's been my journey.
To answer your question, Elizabeth, it would almost be easier to say what hasn't changed. There's just so much that's different. And I know that's the case of probably pretty much everyone here on the panel. It's just a different world, and we've just had to be adaptable. We've had to be flexible. I love what Royce said earlier about the deadlines as a creative. Like, I'm very much in the communications field, but like, I had a great idea for a book in the midst of the pandemic. Like, I had a dream, it was a great idea. And did I write the book? No. I think I wrote a couple of chapters for a couple of days, and I just didn't have the discipline, and I didn't have the focus, and I 100% know that's me. On the flip side, I'm not the greatest artist, but I had an idea to do a painting, and I got it done in a few days because I had the discipline and I had the focus. And so whatever your creative field is, you may have to, and most likely will have to, kind of, especially depending on whenever we start to kind of go back to some semblance of what we were doing before, you're probably going to have to be the one being on top of yourself, you know? And like, you know, you have to be very careful when you're at home, you know, to not have the distractions. And my mom wanted to pop over one day and like do some stuff. And I'm like, my she doesn't work right now. And so the concept that I would be actually working was very weird to her, that I might actually have meetings and I might actually have things to do. And I don't know what she thought I was doing at home. Like, I'm the one having to make sure I'm disciplined. I'm the one having to make sure I'm not going to the fridge, getting too many snacks, like all of that stuff has really, really been a challenge. For communicators, specifically people who do that side of the creative industry, there's definitely more work because with everything online, people are now wanting to start new social media channels. And the irony is the time to start your new social media channel or your new website or whatever was like a year ago, before the pandemic started, because people are exhausted right now, and they're really not trying to look for new stuff necessarily. They're really just trying to kind of hold their sanity with what they've got going on now. And so that has been a little bit of a challenge, just communicating things out, knowing that people are tired and they kind of just want to nap. The biggest thing I've been doing in this time is just giving people grace and just saying, you know what, not everything is going to be perfected. Not everything is going to be to my standards. I don't know what's going on in their life. You know, so many people have gotten sick with COVID, or they've had relatives. And, you know, when you've got that emotionally going on, that can be hard to deal with. They may have another loss in the family going on. Maybe they lost a job. Maybe, maybe they had to move. Like, there's just so many different dynamics of what's been happening in this time. And so the more that I can give people grace and not expect perfection, the better I feel, and the better I also feel about asking for that same grace when I have needed it. So the more grace you can give, definitely do that. And the other thing I'd probably say is just figure out whatever life lessons have tried to come your way in this time, because, you know, I'm a firm believer that it's through the challenges that we grow. It's usually not in the good times that we grow. It's usually through the challenges. And so for me, you know, I spent a lot of time in stillness, just trying to figure out what are my life lessons that I need to learn from me. Those things have probably been the biggest shifts for me throughout this whole thing.
Oh, the only thing that I had many challenges, but the biggest challenge for me was publishing a book, a children's book, and not being able to go into schools or be around children because of the pandemic. So I had to come out with innovative ways to promote my book and to get it into schools because independent publishing, and I saw someone ask that question, hopefully we can address it soon, is it's difficult to get your book into people's hands. It's difficult to to gain exposure. So being virtual, I wasn't able to visit the schools that I planned to visit. So I had to cancel all those appointments. And some of them we switched over to Zooms, but some of them didn't want to have a Zoom meeting. So it was just a headache in a sense, but I'm getting to this space to where I'm having Zoom meetings now and I'm dropping into classrooms because I guess people have accepted that this is reality. So getting past that was the biggest challenge for me, but now we're on an upward trajectory, which is great.
Wow, well, I love that. Well, I love just all your different perspectives on how you had to manage this whole past year. And we're not out of it yet. So we know we're seeing still challenges and new and different kinds of challenges, but it does sound like maybe things are getting a little bit better, at least for some. And so that's good. It's really amazing when you think about Broadway not actually doing anything for about a year. I mean, you know, that's just amazing. Okay, so yes, we are now perfect segue, Royce, into asking student questions because we like to take the last 15 minutes or so for any questions students might have. And I'm really appreciating that we've got some chat going on here. And I'm going to start with, we've got a question in the Q&A, and then it looks like we have maybe a couple in the chat. So I'll start with the first one in the Q&A, and whoever wants to answer, everyone can, or you know, whoever wants to respond to this one. It looks like, oh, we have two. We've got two in the Q&A. So the first one is, what are some perks and challenges one faces when working in a creative field?
I think you're going to doubt yourself. And I think Matt talked about perseverance. You're going to have to encourage yourself sometimes. And especially if you've been in college and you've used to being the leader and you've used to being the best one, and then you go into the creative field and you see everyone else, you kind of doubt yourself a little bit. And so you're going to have to learn to work through that and recognize that everybody started somewhere. And it's okay to start at that entry level position and no longer be the, you know, maybe you were like the, you know, president or the secretary or whatever of your student org, and you were doing all of these things and your supervisors loved you and you had all these friends on campus, and then you go to a new environment and nobody knows you, you know, and they're looking at your stuff and they're seeing all your problems. That is one thing I see a lot. Just in life, I see a lot of young people, their first job is really hard. And a lot of times they don't stay there necessarily terribly long. And I'm not a researcher in that area, so I have no idea what's going on. It's just something anecdotally I've noticed. And so if you feel like you're struggling, I mean, that was certainly my story. My first job was horrible. I cried every day. And I kid you not, and that's actually just that industry. That's actually pretty common for that industry, but I wasn't prepared for it. I was not prepared for it. And so hopefully your story is not that you're going to cry every day, but do know that you may have some struggles and it may be a hard adjustment.
Some perks for me as a creative in the performance industry is being able to get an inside scoop as far as like new works that are coming, being able to get in workshops and helping like cultivate and create a character. Like I said before, the challenge is the rejection. Some stuff you just can't. I'm 5'5" and I go in for roles and it's just like, you're great, you're amazing, you're just short. Nothing I can do about it, you know? So thank you. It was on my resume. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Keep it going. But you get a lot of no's before you get that yes. But when you get that yes, you ride that yes and you go on that yes and you build off that yes. So just be prepared for the rejection and the approval.
I think that was a great answer. And just like this kind of maybe actually answers both of your questions about like challenges and like creative blocks and stuff. For me, it's always the biggest challenge is like the blank page, and like kind of like whatever that age old saying of like success is mostly just showing up. Like if you take the time to, you can think about an idea for a year, or you can sit down and start actively working on it. And like for me, creativity blocks or like writer's block, anything like that, it's literally just like, let me sit down and spend a couple hours figuring this out, because I could think about it forever and never really, and maybe crack the code eventually, but you know, it's you got to just sit down and do it. I found, like Royce and Monique both said, like it's a discipline, but like art itself, I feel like is a discipline. You're always going to have to continually keep working on improving yourself, and like the aspect of just showing up every day for yourself and for your career.
Okay.
I just wanted to step outside because the flatulence was continuing. But I think the biggest challenge for me, I guess, is just comparison with this field and comparing myself to others. And it's similar to what Monique was saying about doubt. Comparison leads to doubt, and doubting yourself and thinking that you can't do it, or thinking that someone else's work is better than yours. And I had to realize that we all are created uniquely, and our creativity is unique as well. No one can emulate what you do, even though it may look similar to you, or you may start to doubt and compare yourself, but no one does what you do because you're unique. We're all created uniquely. So once I got past that, and I realized that once people started buying my book as well, and it was a #1 seller on Amazon for 2 weeks, it debuted at #1. And I was like, you know what? I'm never doubting myself again. And the next book is going to come out and it's going to do just as well. So I started to speak to myself in such a positive way, and my actions started to represent the way I spoke about myself. So anytime you doubt yourself, just tell yourself to shut up and let your higher self speak, and see who you are from a higher light.
That is awesome advice. Okay, well, Royce, we've got a question for you. It says this is for Royce. Could you go further into how did you establish yourself as a writer / author, financially and commercially? Also, what are some of the names of the books you have written?
So I've only published one children's book so far. It's called Royce Sarpy and the Twin Day Disaster. It follows myself as a child throughout elementary school. Initially, I was going to choose someone else, but again, I went with that doubt, and my mom told me, use your name because I gave you your name for a reason. And yeah, so my next book will be coming out in a couple months. It's a follow-up to that one. It's a series of chapter books. It's Royce Sarpy and the Baby Brother Blues. These specific books are usually follow a character. You may know, you hear Junie B. Jones, or you may hear Ramona Rusty, I think that was her name. They have a character's name usually, and they have some disaster or some problem that's happened, and it follows. So I also write poetry, and I'm working on an adult nonfiction biography of my mom right now because she passed recently. So I'm going to celebrate and commemorate her life with a book, and that's going to take me years to write. And I know that because even writing the children's book took me years to write, because I'm very critical. But I had a panel of people that helped to establish me as a writer. I called upon my past professors, even my high school English teachers, other English teachers and ELA teachers in my area, and teachers I worked with in the past. And it went through several editing processes with those teachers. That was something I did on my own. Again, it's self-published. So I went through IndiePub, but after self-publishing, I found on Instagram, I just did a hashtag search for Black publishers. And there's so many Black publishing companies, or Black and Brown, or any independent publishing companies that are out there for us, that, because big name publishing companies, they do look past us often. And it's sad, but during the pandemic last year, and also the, I guess, racial awakening, if you will, it made us more visible. So during that time, the hashtag searches were everywhere, and were permeated throughout Instagram and Twitter and all social media. So it was easy to find publishers and authors who are independent and publish up and coming Black authors. So I was able to do it that way. And I established myself as a writer as well by going to different open mics with my poetry and speaking and just getting my name out there. And I try to use the same photograph, the same graphics, the same names to keep it consistent wherever I go. I hope that answered it.
Awesome. Okay, so I know we've got a few more. We'll make sure I can get as many as possible. Says, let's see. Okay, I think this, as a person of color who wants to be a novelist, how difficult is it to be taken seriously as a Black creator? Is there anything that I, as a Black writer, should know about the publishing industry?
Well, it's politics. So I feel any industry is very political when it comes to big money. And the larger publishing companies, they'll offer you so much money up front, but they may want to change everything you did about your work. That's why I went with an independent publisher, because I didn't want, my work was specifically for Black and brown kids, but initially for Black and brown kids to pick up and read because we don't have books for them at this space. So I didn't want my work to be changed. And I already went through several editing processes with different editors, like I was saying. So I didn't want it to go through a big publishing company and they change my whole story. So, because once they purchase it, they can do virtually anything with it. So you have to read through your contract. I have a contract with my illustrator and my publisher, just to make sure you read through it with the fine-tooth comb, go through it with the lawyer if you can, and be very knowledgeable of what you're signing up for. So that, because you're gonna, especially if your story takes off even with the independent publisher, you're gonna have publishing companies coming after you to probably purchase your work. And with that, just know what you're getting yourself into. Go through your contract and make sure you are, well knowledgeable with everything that happens thereafter, because your rights could be taken away from your work. I think I don't look to I realize as well with the comparison thing, I don't look to companies to take me serious. My work is taken serious because of the customers. They show me, their reviews is what shows me I'm being taken serious. I don't have to look to someone else or large publishing companies to do that. So just trust your work and put it out there was what I would say.
And one thing to add is that even after it's published, continue to like market and brand it, because I've had two very close friends, and it hurt me as someone who does branding to see how the publishing company slowly stopped marketing their book. Slowly. And I was just like, yo, like sales are not moving, nothing is happening. And we saw the demographics and how a lot of Black people of color, their books just started to slowly dwindle. I was like, nope, we need a book tour. You need to get on IG Live, read this book, send it to another influencer, have them market it. Like you have to, like, what was that Olivia Pope quote from Scandal, or the Rowan Pope? You have to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard. Like you have to keep working even after work is done. Like it doesn't stop. So that's my little input.
I think that's wonderful. Great advice. I'm sorry, I know we've just got just a few more minutes left and we still have more questions, which is so great. I'm going to skip one question first and then go right back to it, because I think this might help if we don't get a chance to answer all the questions. We would love to know, and this student is asking, is there any way we could follow you all on any of your social media pages? And then if you are, if you're able to, if you feel the freedom to, we would like to invite you to maybe put a contact information or something in the chat if you're able to do so. I know we talked about networking and creating opportunities and reaching out and building relationships. If y'all are able to share your information for students to reach out to you, please feel free to do that in the chat, so they'll have that. And so there's that question. And then it looks like we've got, I've always heard follow your passion or do what you love. But how do you find a niche if you don't know what you love, or if you don't have a real passion? I don't fit into a traditional niche in my field, and I don't want to go back to beating my head against the post I used to work in previously. Oh, Lucy's going to answer this one.
it takes time. It takes experience. It takes living in order to really figure out what it is that makes you jump out of bed in the morning and want to work. Like I said, I do a lot of stuff, and people ask me all the time, Justin, how do you do all this? It's because it brings me joy, bringing other people joy, like seeing people happy, like being a nutritionist. I've been vegan for 7 years, and people's like, well, what is this like? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's get this, squared away. Branding and marketing, I'm always here to help people. So me learning and figure out all these things brings me joy to help other people. But it took some time to get there. Like it took me at least 10 years to figure out what it is I really wanted to do. I started off as a music teacher, love music. Just the kids back then in Memphis just wanted to test my nerves, but I still enjoy teaching music. So that part of me will never die, but it takes living an experience to really figure out what it is that makes you want to jump out of bed in the morning.
Hmm.
I will say this, I've had a similar experience with volunteering. Like I love to volunteer, I love to make a difference. And for a long time, I was trying to figure out my passion because I just want to volunteer for everything. And I was like, oh, I need to find the purpose. I need to find the specific thing I need to be volunteering for. And I realized I wasn't volunteering for anything, because I was so worried about trying to find the perfect thing. And then finally, my faith is very important to me. And I heard a really good sermon about if you're not sure what your purpose is, just start serving. And so if you're not sure what your career move is, just start doing things. And you'll find that as you get into the work world, you'll start to see, oh, I like this more better, so I'm going to go down this path. And so it's okay if you don't totally have that figured out. Just start doing something. And lo and behold, that is very much my testimony. I now very much have my passions and my purposes, and everything is really starting to come to fruition. But I had to first kind of allow myself to get out there and not do it exactly right at first.
I have to jump in as the career counselor here, Elizabeth, and I know you were going to say, but I don't like that phrase, follow your passion, because I know as a young college student, I didn't have passion. At 15 years old, I don't have a passion. I have lots of things that I like. And I think especially true for creatives, which I actually count myself as that. There's all kinds of things. And we look at oh, I would love to try that. I'd love to do this and pull that. It comes and it morphs over time. And so don't get caught up in trying to find the one thing. There isn't one thing. There's not, one right path. There's not one specific thing that you're meant to be doing for the rest of your life. It could be a combination of things. And as you go along your path, you're going to find these things that feed your soul. And it might be more than one thing. It might be one thing, but it's just, as Monique said, you just got to keep going and quit worrying so much about that passion. Look, just what sparks your interest. You do a little Marie Kondo. What sparks joy? So.
Well, and passions changed, and if anything, or passions can change, or you can just be impacted by a world pandemic, and things can just change, and you have to reinvent or rethink or look for new ideas. So I think that's helpful to me when I think I don't have to pick one specific thing. It may look like some people out there have one thing that they have found that they do, and that's what they do. And if I don't do that, then there's something wrong with me. But I think that if we limit that can be tough. That can be really difficult. So I love the idea from Monique of just get out there and just start trying something. And if you don't like it, it's okay, and then you can try something else. And over time, you will start to find that things are making a connection, just invalidating yourself. So we have gone a couple minutes over, and I'm so sorry. Honestly, I feel like we could talk for a couple more hours. I'm so appreciative of everything that everyone has shared. Have we been able to get everyone's questions? I want to make sure. I don't know if we have time. We've just to answer a couple more questions. I don't want to keep anything over. I don't know. We've got a couple more good questions. What do you think, Lucy?
I think as long as we got people who hang on, if our panelists need to roll off, we totally respect that time. But if you have a minute to stick around, we can you know, I love the students have questions.
We'll just, I tell you what, we'll take these last two and then we can maybe go from there. Let's see. Okay, so we've got one more question. How can we find mentors in our chosen creative fields? Is there a website we can go to?
I think just like Instagram or Twitter, like depending on what it is you want to do, you have access to thousands of people who are potentially doing what you might want to do, and just reach out to them and ask questions. Most creative people I've ever reached out to are so nice and forthcoming and give me like a way more comprehensive response than I was even could have hoped for. And I think as long as you approach with that same energy of just like wanting to learn and being open, then I think, yeah, people just want to tell you how they got where they are. And there's a lot of information readily available out there for you.
I would add that it depends a little bit on, are you looking for a like one time kind of like give me some advice on how you got into the industry, or are you looking for a long-term relationship? And if you're looking for a longer term relationship, figure out how can you add value to their life. And I got that advice years ago, and it certainly has helped. And that's hard when you're doing those cold calls, but maybe they work with a nonprofit and maybe you could volunteer with that nonprofit too, or maybe they've started a whatever and you could help out with that. Like, where can you just kind of organically connect with them? Because I've mentored students and a lot of times it hasn't gone well because I don't really have a relationship with them. But then the informal mentorship relationships I have, where it was never established, they never reached out and they never said, hey, will you mentor me? It just kind of blossomed. Those are the ones where they get the most out. And the same thing with me. So that's kind of my tip there.
I would also say before you coin someone a mentor, make sure you research them because sometimes we see something on the surface, but behind closed doors, they're not the same person. So really do your research before you call someone a mentor, because especially in the performance industry, people on stage are not the same people off stage. And that's all I'll say about that. But yeah, just do your research.
That's a very good point.
You start with informational interviews, and then if that goes well, dive into that that mentor relationship. Feel it out first.
Add to that, the best thing I learned about interviewing for anything is you're interviewing them as well. And when I was young, it was a one-way thing. And then I realized, oh, I have power too, and I don't have to accept every job. And I want to make sure that this is someone I'm good. And if there's something in your spirit that's like a little off, 99 times out of 100, you need to listen to that.
I love that, because I think most students feel like I've just got to get the job, I have to have it, but it is a two-way street. And I love that, because you mentioned earlier that the first job, a lot of first jobs out of college can just be really hard. There's just so many challenges. You're moving straight from college, which for a lot of, and I know for TWU, we have such a great environment that a lot of students feel really comfortable here. And then you go out there and it's woo. So yeah, I love the whole mention of it's a two-way street, and you really need to see if they're a fit for you just as much as they're trying to figure out if you're a fit for them. Okay, well, I know we've gone past, and so I just want to thank all of you so much again for just all your awesome advice, your guidance, your responses, your ideas. I'm sure the students learned so much from this. I'm so thrilled we have this on recording so that now people can go back and listen and maybe flesh out some things even more for themselves. And just to the students, since it looks like everybody did put in the chat contact information, I hope you'll reach out and maybe you'll get additional conversation and connection with our expert panel here, and maybe take advantage of all of their wonderful guidance and advice. So thank y'all so much. And we'll be watching to see what y'all are doing. We can't wait. And hopefully we'll get to connect again with you all soon. So thank you, everyone.